Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us here. My name is Angus Parsad-White. I'm the Chief Executive of Conservative Home, and it's a pleasure to see so many of you here in our marquee this evening for this event in partnership with, and I'll try and get them all in some sort of logical order, RTPI, so the Royal Town and Planning Institute, RICS, REBA and CIOB, various posters and things behind us so you can get all the acronyms, because I will no doubt get them all in the wrong order. So thank you to all of the organisations, the joint institutes as we call them, for partnering with us again this year, and really great to have them with us. Also delighted to be joined by the Housing and Planning Minister. Rachel, thank you for joining us as well. And thank you to the people who are watching on the live stream at home. There will be an opportunity later in the event for you to put your questions to our panel, so please do get thinking on some good questions for them. I'm sure you'll have many. When I call you, please raise your hand when you have a question later on. I will call you, someone will come to you with the microphone, please introduce yourself. And if you start with, it's more of a comment really, then please sit down again immediately. Questions only. So I think, understandably, at Party Conference, there is always a lot of focus on housing. It's a very hot topic, and it normally falls along generational divides in terms of people's views on where the housing crisis is at. And I think there's always a range of topics in terms of housing numbers, targets, quality of build, and elements around sustainability and retrofitting. And over the next hour, we're going to try and encapsulate as many of those things as possible in a quick whirlwind tour, but under the sort of crucial question, which is, will the housing crisis determine the next election? I suspect in a yes-no answer, we'll probably say yes, but we will find out over the course of the next hour the detail behind that. How the Conservative Party, allegedly the party of home ownership, originally the party of home ownership, addresses that question and those issues over the coming months will of course be key to the election. So to kick us off and to certainly speak from a more expert perspective than myself, I'll introduce each of the panelists and ask them to give you a couple of minutes about who they are and the work they're doing. Firstly, as President of the CIOB, Sandy Rees-Jones.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everybody to attend one of the sessions at the end of a very busy day. Yes, I'm President of the Chartered Institute of Building, which has been in place since 1834. We're a charitable institution, we're an awarding body. We uphold standards, and we're totally committed to delivering an effective construction industry, both for the people who work in it and for the people who benefit from it. I think as far as housing goes, it is such an essential part for all of us. It's the element in the construction industry that is really important to everybody. So it's emotive, it's essential, it's critical, and we have some major issues facing us now. What we're concerned about in the CIOB is looking at the variation in delivering that satisfactorily. We have a very old housing stock. So retrofit, making the homes we've got, and I'm going to use the word home rather than housing in this context, because I think that's what it really means. It's how we make the homes we already have, and we have the oldest stock in Europe, not only fit to live in, but with an eye to being properly managed in order to be energy efficient. So net zero is very important to reduce the cost of living in those homes. We also have issues on the delays and the availability and the affordability of new homes. How are we going to solve this? Well, I'm delighted to be on the panel with my fellow presidents here, because the way we're going to start shifting the dial is through collaboration, and collaboration is my presidential theme. So we are working together to demonstrate to government and policymakers that we are a unified, coordinated voice in dealing with this. So we do need to bring on board the planners, the surveyors, the engineers, the sustainability and energy people, the architects, in order to put forward a coherent, established strategy. And at the bottom of all this, we need people. We need the people to deliver. We're 225,000 people short to build the homes we need, and we need to be very creative, imaginative and engaging in order to satisfy it. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much, Sandy. And Mia, as President of REBA.
Thank you so much, Angus. Thank you so much, Conservative Home, for hosting this wonderful panel and event. My name is Muyiwa Oki. I'm the president of the Royal Institute of British Architects, the youngest president in its 189-year history. Here at the RIBA, we are focused on advocating for a more sustainable built environment, and we can do that in various ways. Through retrofit, as been discussed here already on the panel, but also promoting measures to make the profession, design expertise, fairer, more diverse and inclusive, so that when we're designing and thinking about homes, spaces and places, we're doing it for the community that it serves, but also championing the use of innovative methods and technologies to deliver these new homes, places that we are going to live in. Because at the end of it all, we need to bring high quality design expertise to the people that need it the most. Thank you.
Thank you, Mia. And President of RTPI, Sue Bridge.
Hello, my name's Sue Bridge. I'm the President of the Royal Town Planning Institute, and the answer to the question is yes. We have 27,000 members currently working in planning in both private and public sectors, and we are seeing at first hand the increasing politicisation and polarisation of housing issues around the country. The planning systems that we rely on to deliver pathways into home ownership find themselves in a perfect storm. Council planning budgets have fallen by 43% across England on average since 2013. And at the same time, a quarter of qualified planners have left the public sector. Uncertainty about planning through the legislative and regulatory process has made it difficult for councils and developers to adapt and accelerate local plan preparation. So although we welcome some of the provisions in the Levelling Up Bill currently going through Parliament, we do need to look very closely at how we can make procedural changes to improve the situation. But procedure alone will not change the situation. Politicians, our leaders, have to step up to the plate and deliver a better culture and aspiration about home ownership and delivery of new homes. And I'll leave it at that for the moment.
Thank you very much, Sue. And Martin Samworth, Chair of RICS.
Evening, everybody. I'm Martin Samworth. I'm the Chair of the Board of the RICS. The answer to the question, I think, is actually it should be, but it probably won't be. I suspect it may be overtaken by tax cuts or the NHS or some of those other topical issues that are whirring around this event at the moment. But housing is clearly very much of an issue. In fact, the real estate sector generally, I think, should be on the political agenda far more than it is. It is the largest asset class globally, 217 trillion, of which a very high proportion of that is residential. It is an issue that touches everybody's lives. It affects them personally, affects their health, affects their families, etc., etc. And it also represents a very significant proportion of their monthly spend. Depending on whether they rent or they own, it's 40 to 60% of their monthly outgoings. Whatever government can do to help bring that down will enable them to spend on other things or have a better standard of living. It is clearly an issue. For me, however, I think it's important to rebalance the equation. There's a lot of discussion about insufficient supply, but there is demand. It's very important that we have a more balanced equation, I believe. And to create more supply, one or two things that perhaps government should consider is clearly facilitating a functional planning system. We have a real problem with that. And at the moment, I think as at March 2022, only 42% of local planning authorities had a fully up-to-date local plan. Only 2/3 of English councils have a 5-year land supply, so 1/3 don't. The planning system, as you've just heard, doesn't have enough staff. It's bureaucratic, it's slow, it's arguably dysfunctional. We need more grants, we need more tax incentives, perhaps more private rented sector, which has been largely taken out of the market with the loss of tax benefits. And to create more demand to rebalance that equation, perhaps some help to buy support. Perhaps we make it easier for people to buy. It takes 6 months on average to buy a property. Can you believe that? That's crazy in today's world. We need more flexible mortgages, perhaps. We need more innovation of the types of products that people can use to buy a property. And perhaps the mortgage suppliers taking a little bit more risk, and perhaps we need to broaden demand by having more shared ownership and perhaps more rent to buy. So maybe just think about the balance of the supply-demand equation and how we can look at that to make sure we have more people enjoying more homes, whether they're renting or buying.
Thank you, Martin. And as I said earlier, we're very pleased to have Rachel here as Housing and Planning Minister. Rachel, I know you have a very full in-tray on all of the matters that have already been brought up, and a very packed conference schedule as well. So thank you for joining us. Over to you.
It's a pleasure, and it's great to be here, and I've really enjoyed all of the events that I've been to, and it's nice to see actually starting to see some familiar faces, and that's always nice. And I think this is a very controversial area. There are so many different views. And in answer to the basic question, will the housing crisis determine the next election? I think it's very difficult to say. I think it will in some areas, and it very much depends on the area you live in and who you are. And I would reflect perhaps a couple of things. Firstly, I do agree with, was it Sue, who said that planning has become very polarised and politicised. And I think that's reflected in the experience that I had when I was very privileged to be appointed as Housing and Planning Minister. My colleagues kind of came up to me in the House of Commons and sort of shook my hand and said, well done. And then they said, oh, have they given you planning as well? And I went, yeah. And they went, oh, poor you. And then they started beating a path to my door with all the problems that they have in their own local areas with planning. So my reflection on housing is that we need to look at this as a system. There's no point thinking there is one single element that's going to fix this overnight or fix it quickly. There aren't any quick fixes, unfortunately, and I know that obviously political opponents will sort of start to come forward and say that they've got the answer to the housing crisis. But the God's honest truth is that there is no one single answer. We're looking at this through a long-term strategic lens, and that's what Michael Gove started to talk about a bit in the long-term plan for housing. Because it's absolutely right that if we start incentivising and pumping more demand into the system through Help to Buy or First Homes or through any of these schemes, that's great for those people, but there is the risk that it inflates the prices and makes it more difficult for people elsewhere in the system. So we always have to look at anything we're doing on the demand side and balance that with the supply side. So the current focus of our work right now is to look at that supply side on a much more interventionist basis. So we are looking at places where there's huge pressures on affordability, namely London, which really are, I'm afraid, London is just not stepping up to the plate when it comes to delivering the amount of housing that they need to, compared to the need. Cambridge, where again we see affordability pressures and a constraint on our national ambitions to be a life sciences superpower, because we just cannot attract people into that city because of the constraints on it. And then multiple other places as well where we see the need for more government intervention. Obviously, you know, I'm a Conservative, I believe in free markets, but this is not a market that is free. So we do need to take proportionate action to address some of these things in the national interest, and that's what we're doing. And we always, every single panel I've done, whatever subject we start with, we come back to planning. And I'm aware I'm in a very You know, if you probably combine all of your years of experience together, it'd probably be thousands and thousands. And I've been housing minister for 10 months. By the way, I'm not the shortest serving housing minister anymore. Although there have been 15, I am not the shortest serving. I'm the longest serving since Kit Malthouse. So I'm just proud of that, and I'm going to keep going. But we have to do a lot in the planning space, and I know there's many challenges. That's why we're proceeding. We're not doing it overnight. Some people would like us to sort of rip up the system. I don't think that's sensible. We have to listen to the experts who are on this panel with me and come to a consensus about how we do planning and how we get housing built in this country.
Rachel, thank you very much. I want to start as a first question, building on Sandy's theme of collaboration. But there's sort of two separate questions with this. Firstly, thinking about collaboration that's needed between national government and local authorities and developers and architects and all those elements that you described, because it seems from my perspective, obviously I'm not in the industry itself, but it seems that there is this tension between government and industry, and then adding in local authorities that as well, that there's lots of moving parts which aren't necessarily moving as they should. Sandy, I don't know if you want to take this one first as it's kind of in your themes, but what role does collaboration have to play in solving this, and how can we get there, and how can we make that collaboration work better? Because it feels like it's not always doing so at the moment.
Well, I think it's really important to sit round a table and look at what the core objective is, which is to deliver homes in an affordable way or to sustain the housing stock. I think what is interesting looking regionally and locally, where there have been very successful collaborations to deliver something locally, and I think this is going to increase. I'm mindful, it came into my memory quite recently, I was involved many years ago with the development of Glenrothes Newtown, and what they discovered there was that what was needed for the people moving there was not what the architects and planners imagined they would want. They wanted something that mirrored the communities they were leaving in order to create a place they wanted to live in. So I think with collaboration, it's a way of finding around the log jams, and also to look at other issues. I mean, there's an elephant in the room here, which is land prices, if we're talking new housing. How do we manage land prices? How do we make it possible for SME builders? And I think here again, we need to remember that our industry is a pyramid. So you have the tier one house builders at the top, so a small group responsible for a large quantity, but a big base along the bottom. And by finding a way of making it possible for the smaller builders to acquire land at a reasonable price, employ local people, deliver homes in a way that fits with the community and create revenue, would be a really important way forward. So we need collaboration and discussion at that level, rather than thinking in terms of the usual. So that is one way of doing it. I think also we need to look at local plans and work out what is appropriate locally. I think it's quite, we think policy as a big beast, but I think it's also policy as an enabling structure, but recognizing what needs to happen in reality on the ground. And that is where I think we can do that collaboration, to find it appropriate. And it's a job opportunity. I mean, we're talking about skills, we're losing planners. I don't know any sector that isn't short of people. But what we're delivering is something that is close to their hearts. Why can't we get more people in? And we need to make it possible. So I think there's land, there's local collaboration, and there's understanding how to make things work. There's a phrase I came across, and apologies to those who might have been in an earlier meeting I was, some years ago when an international engineer said to me, we need to move away from DAD, decide, announce, defend, to mum, meet, unify and motivate. And I think that can be something that can reduce the emotion and move towards something practical.
Thank you. And Rachel, from carrying on that sort of theme of collaboration, obviously collaboration across industry and with government is one thing, But thinking about collaboration within government itself and the different departments, how much work do you and the team at DLUC do with, say, Department for Transport in thinking about infrastructure and joining up all these communities? Because ultimately, if you've got people who want to live in London, want to be able to commute quickly to work, that's fine for as long as the infrastructure is there. But if the space isn't there for the housing or the stock isn't there, then that sort of falls apart quite quickly. If you can have a train which gets you quite quickly into central London, you can live further out. Likewise, obviously, if you had a high-speed train further up north, then that might present other opportunities for people to live elsewhere. And we won't go down that cul-de-sac. I should flag that is for a separate time. But there is a point here, isn't there, about infrastructure and the role that it has to play in helping to deliver more housing in more areas.
Yeah, absolutely. So I work across government, of course I do, and then locally as well. Local areas, when they're doing their local plans, there is a requirement for them, just as you said, Sandy, to work with all of these factors and think about what's needed, because actually we know that the major objection that actually communities have very often about development is, there is no infrastructure, I can't already get on the train, I can't get on the road, I can't get my kids to school, into the school, there's no places, I can't get a GP appointment. So if you can deal with that issue, there are some local areas who are doing that successfully. So I want to just sort of say one thing about the system that we have now. It is very easy to sort of say everything's broken, everything's terrible, it's a disaster. And I'm the first to say that there are a lot of problems and we're not where we need to be. But there are some things that we're doing right. And we need to learn from those and not just smash everything up completely, but take what we do know about what does work and make sure we do that in more places. So in terms of the overall housing supply, which is what I started out by saying, we've actually had, I think, out of the last 5 years, we've had the 3 highest years of housing supply delivery for the last 30 years. And they've all come in the last 5 years. So yes, they're nowhere near the 300,000, but they're a lot closer than they have been. So there are some elements of some things that are working. So when we get local plans that work, when they do think about the infrastructure, the transport, the buses, the green spaces, the play parks, everything else that's needed, on average, those areas are delivering 14% more houses. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot better than 14% less, or some areas which have no local plans at all because nobody can agree. And I think that I do take a long-term view of this. I was thinking as Sandy was talking, I'm a mum. I've got 4 kids. They're all renting and trying to buy, get on them. Literally, my son is literally messaging me now going, I've just looked round a house, should I put an offer in? And I've got one that's bought, I've got 2 renting, I've got 1 granddaughter, another one on the way. So I really do care about this. This is infrastructure and decisions that we're making now that is going to impact our country for generations to come. So we have to look at this through a long-term lens. And if that means, unfortunately, we might need to upset some people along the way, unfortunately, that's sometimes what we have to do.
And see, can I bring you in on this? I know you do a lot of work on local plans and the role that they play.
Yeah, it's local plans are potential tools, and where we have got successes is where councils have seized the ability to develop their local plans into investment tools for their area. Those successful local plans are led by leaders, not just in the councils, but community leaders as well, who have vision and aspiration for their area. And community involvement, community engagement, community ownership of those plans is so important. And I think if we look at where plans are stronger compared to where plans are weaker, we will find that aspiration and vision. Today we've launched our Planifesto. You've got little leaflets on your chairs. And one of the things that we're asking for all political parties in the run-up to the general election is for a stronger plan-led system. And if you have a plan which has got community engagement, community ownership, then I think we are a long way towards coming to a resolution of this issue.
So, Mia, building on that in terms of your perspective on the design of spaces. I think this is really important, right? That when you're talking about getting communities on board with plans, and when you talk about moving from dad to mum, which I think is a great terminology, to be able to bring people along, right? You have to make them feel like new houses are something they're going to want to see, because at the moment they think, oh, it's going to be a sort of a hastily built estate that has no bearing on the current environment of a town and affects the character.
Yes, I mean, I definitely support the points made about local plans, but I just want to caution about local plans. Local plans can't be too prescriptive. They need to have a little bit more lax and descriptive enough so that people, design experts, can interpret them for the local context. And it needs to be a lot more geared towards the end goal, which is a good quality life for the inhabitants, the community that's there. And you can do that through that collaboration that we're talking about, getting the community engaged with the local plans. Also, I would say that the local plans need to be able to be adopted and also updated quicker, because we talked about how some of the local plans, some local authorities don't have local plans. We need to be able to close down the skills gap within local planning authorities, so that those areas that don't have local plans, they have there is more incentives to build local plans, because there's the skills gap that has been left open for a while is closed, because a local plan can be developed. I think in all, I think it is all about the quality of the building, the quality of the built environment. And I think local plans, yes, they do support a development of good housing.
Excellent, thank you. And building on that element around skills, Martin, bring you in here. What do you think needs to be done to help address that shortage that we've got in skills generally, but also particularly as we pivot the conversation slightly to think a bit more about sustainability and retrofitting and that sort of area of this?
Well, we're certainly trying to encourage more people into working in the built environment generally, because that is a way to help address that skills gap. So we're trying to get into more universities, more schools, and just encourage more people to participate in the built environment in whichever way is most suitable to them. So that is an ongoing programme, and I think that will help address some of the issues. On the point of collaboration, I'm a real believer in collaboration. It makes a massive difference. I think all of us on this panel should be working as closely as we can to address this issue. It would be nice if it was recognised as an apolitical kind of topic, if you like, and should be a cross-party issue that we're all trying to address, and all of those that have influence around it should work together to try and help solve this problem. Whilst collaboration is very valuable and important, I also believe that it's important to make sure that those that need encouragement and those that should be accountable for delivering some of the things that they're encouraged and required to do should do so. And I have to say, I think I don't quite understand why so many local authorities are allowed to miss their 5-year supply, or they don't have up-to-date plans, and so on and so forth. I think they need to be more accountable for that, and they need to be encouraged to put those shortcomings right to help solve this problem.
Thank you. I appreciate we've got lots of people in the room, so I'm keen to bring in some questions now if we can. I'll try and take them in pairs so we can get through a few together. So if we can go to the lady on the aisle here and the gentleman in the white shirt here first, please. And you state your name for us.
Thanks very much. Alex Joseph from Bright Blue, and worth mentioning, I'm RTPI and RSCS member. My question relates to risk, and if you pick themes ranging from neutrality through to second staircases, these are issues that are difficult for the industry to navigate. They're in some cases unexpected, difficult to price in, and if you're an SME, if you're thinking about the diversity of the industry, it's really hard to survive this. If you're a big house builder, it's a lot easier. Could the panel comment on ways to accelerate the decision making on these sorts of issues that would help the industry navigate what are quite significant roadblocks?
Thank you very much, and we'll take the the question down here as well at the same
Thank
time.
you. My name is Ben Toomey. I'm the Chief Executive of Generation Rent. Hello again, Minister.
Hello.
We've talked a lot about the battleground of planning. There's also a battleground for renters, millions of renters who see their cost of renting and the evictions that they face when rents are put up as the biggest concern in the cost of living crisis. So my question is about Section 21 no-fault evictions, which there's cross-party support to end. In England, obviously, the Conservative government is the only one that can end those. So I'm just asking the Minister, does she think that if they don't end Section 21 eviction notices, that will have a big impact on how renters see the party going into the election? Thank you.
Thanks very much. So first off on the kind of the risks and uncertainty part of this, I don't know who wants to jump in first. Yeah, Mima, thank you.
So the risk element is an interesting one, and it's an important one as well. It goes back to the local plans discussion. I think we need to encourage, and government needs to do this as well, encourage and actively promote design expertise in the development of new homes and development of existing homes. And these design experts, architects included, planners included, will have the capacity, the technical ability to navigate those risks. The local plans, I believe, help in some way to define and create that certainty of development. And the more and more local authorities that have local plans, the more certainty of development and less risk associated with development.
Thank you.
Could I just add
Yeah,
something
Sandy,
to that? Back on the collaboration theme, absolutely. I mean, risk and the construction industry are hand in hand, aren't they? And for years, it's how you kick the risk down the road, and we then talk about golden thread. But back on the collaboration theme, CIOB and RIBA have jointly produced a paper on safe building, and we're also working together with the other institutions on the issues around secondary staircases. So we are actively looking at those as issues and saying, how can we discuss this and then produce something that can be used as an underpinning framework? So that's the sort of bread and butter element of it.
Thank you. And Rachel, from your side, we've obviously touched a little bit on the legislative environment and what the government can do from that side of things. But in terms of helping to take away some of that uncertainty for the industry, it'd be good to get your thoughts on that. And then I'll let you sort of follow up on the question on Section 21 as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I do recognise absolutely, Alex, what you said about the second staircases and the nutrient thing. I mean, that's particularly galling and frustrating because there's 100,000 homes which have got planning permission, which are ready to go, which can't be delivered. And houses, let's be clear, are not the source of pollution. They are not. And we've left the EU now. We should be able to actually have the regulations that protect our rivers and waterways, which of course everybody wants to see, which is vitally important, but not be bound by this defective, frankly, regulation that we've inherited from the EU, which actually has done nothing to improve the source and to actually remediate the waterways at all. So we put forward a proportionate, a sensible, workable solution to the House of Lords. It was voted down by the Labour Lords, unfortunately. So good luck with taking the politics out of this. Go and tell that to your Labour friends if you have any. But we will bring it back into the Commons and hopefully we'll get it through. And on the, sorry, what was the other thing? Oh, generation rent. Yes, Ben will have heard me say this about 85 times today. We all stood on a manifesto to abolish Section 21 evictions. We have to do it in a balanced way. So it's obviously fair to tenants, and you've made those points extremely well. But we need to also do it in a way that's fair to landlords. We've been taking a bit of time to listen to concerns from landlords and from that sector and from people who are not part of a sector but just happen to be landlords. We want to get it right because we don't want to have unintended consequences of seeing people who have been renting out property for a long period of time feeling it's not worth it. And ultimately that would be detrimental for Ben and the people that he's standing up for so ably. We will get that legislation through Parliament, and I'm determined to bring it forward to Parliament.
Thank you, Rachel. We'll take another two questions, and there's a lot more you've all been thinking. Excellent. Yeah, if we can please go to the gentleman in the middle come forward a few rows, Salvatore. This gentleman here, yeah, the one pointing to himself, that's the one. It's that gentleman there, and then we'll cross right over to the gentleman at the front of the T there.
Hi, my name's Andrew White. I work for a house builder. I just wanted to follow up on the second staircase thing, because there are three of the organisations represented on the panel demanded that the limit on second staircases be lowered to 18 metres. And one of the big challenges in the house building industry at the moment, particularly in brownfield, particularly in cities, particularly where the house building crisis is most acute, is because we don't know what we have to build. We don't know what the second staircase looks like. We don't know if it's a second staircase. Some people are demanding a full second core with firefighting lifts, evacuation lifts, wet risers. That would take about 900 square feet out of a building. That takes 1/8 of the entire housing delivery that's delivered in flats out. It costs about £1 million per floor. Lowering it from 30 metres to 18 metres brings another 60,000 homes just in London that have consent into this confusion. So at the moment, TfL, the biggest land owner in London, is on stop. Most of the housing associations are on stop. International investors are on stop because of this. And I'd like the members on the panel that demanded this situation to firstly justify why they wanted this, and also to tell us what they would like us to build, because we don't know.
Okay, thank you. And we'll take the question at the other end here.
Andrew Taylor, Vistry Group, so another house builder, so apologies. So a question in two parts, one to Rachel and one to the rest of the panel. Rachel, very nice letter to Spelthorne recently, and one of the only ways we're going to get things delivered in local plans is about that muscular intervention from government. But for the rest, so I'm interested in where is next. But for the rest of the panel, the consensus element that we've been talking about, how do we get that consensus with local government to actually want to come forward to deliver local plans for the future of their places?
Thank you very much. So on the first question around second staircases, and again, it's sort of building on that uncertainty point. I don't know, Martin, I don't know if you want to come on.
Well, I think it's a very good question. I think clearly more guidance and more standard as early as possible is really, the best thing that both the RICS and other professional bodies on this panel can try and provide to unlock the problem. So I think that's something we all need to take away and try and give more clear guidance on.
Thank you. See, do you want to come on that at all?
Oh, no, it's way beyond my expertise. I didn't know. Absolutely.
I'll be honest. I wasn't aware of who had demanded it, so I had a 1 in 4 chance I was going to get that one wrong, wasn't I? So, shading me up. Thank you. Anyone else who wants to come on that first part?
Well, I think it raises another essential bit in the discussion, risk and uncertainty. Yes, it needs to be certain. We need to be quicker, but I think we need to be safe. So let's get on with getting certainty into something that is an essential safety issue.
And the first part of the second question, Rachel, around interventions from government. You planning to make any other major interventions with any local authorities?
Well, I thought it was the right thing to do, to make that intervention. We monitor closely every single local authority in the country. And actually, although there are lots of numbers reported in the media about this number and that number of local authorities have or have not got their local plans, they're all wrong, because there is no public available database. There should be, and we're working on that. But we actually do know, because I've got my officials, I've got a whole team of people, they actually work with every local authority. And there are all sorts of legitimate reasons in a plan process, even when it's done properly, why they might need to stop or, have a pause or do something, or, the different stages of it. So that doesn't necessarily mean that they've actually stopped making plans. And there are local authorities, even since we've introduced some of the changes into the framework and we've got the Levelling Up Bill going through, we've got plenty of local authorities who are actually serving their residents and progressing local plans and getting stuff built. So that's good. But where they're not doing that, and again, this sort of does go back a bit to taking the politics out of planning, and please tell the Lib Dems that, is all I would say on that note. We need to do the right thing, which is we need to be clear that you are failing your residents. And if they turn around and say, well, look, we don't like the local plan that the last lot did, or we've got so much green belt, or we've got water scarcity, or we've got all these other things, and we've already over-delivered on all of our targets. In some cases, that might be true, and we can work with you on some of those things. But in some cases, it's just not true, and you haven't delivered the housing that's needed. And we do see this in areas like Spelthorne, where, frankly, I think it's the most expensive area of the country to try and buy a house compared to average incomes. It's absolutely shockingly expensive, and yet there is a demand there. And I think this housing debate sometimes is so. It gets so difficult to navigate because sort of people will sometimes say, we don't mind houses as long as they're for locals. I mean, how can you plan like that, right? You just can't, because people need to move house. People need to move around the country. And why should it be that nobody can ever move to Spelthorne again? Ever. It cannot be true. I know that they've got Greenbelt, and that's another, issue that people have got views on. But, if your elected representatives can't get together and say, yes, we've got Greenbelt, we'll protect that, but we'll release that bit over there, which they can do, by the way. We'll release these fields and we'll build here, but we won't build there, and get that consensus, then they are failing. And, they are all going around and campaigning against any development anywhere because it might harm one blade of grass. I mean, that's not in the interest of the country or their communities. So it is right that we take those decisions. We make ourselves extremely unpopular with Spelthorne, but I'm quite happy to do that because it's the right thing to do.
And just on the second part of that around getting consensus in communities and local authorities. So I know you sort of touched on this earlier, but how do we do that? How do we make that work better?
Well, we live in a democracy, so we're never going to be able to take politics out of that process. So how do we work within that is important. I worked in local government for many, many years, and I've got the scars to prove it as well. So politicians, and it goes back to my original point, we need leadership, but we need vision. And that vision has to be a shared vision. And one of the things I think is really important is that the community involvement at the earliest stage in the plan making process. And I'm not talking about consultation, I am talking about involvement. Now, the problem with that is it takes time, it takes money, and local government is so grossly under-resourced that we'll never be able to do it on the basis of the resources, the skills, and the number of people the number of planners that we have working in local government. We need more resources, more planners, working in a more collaborative environment.
Thank you. We'll take another couple of questions, Salvatore, if we can, with the mic. So we've got the lady down the front here, right at the front row, and then the gentleman right at the end behind. Thank you.
Hiya, I'm Lisa Hazelden from The Spectator. My question is for the Minister. One of the things that people often find as an obstacle to buying a house is acquiring a mortgage, being able to get a mortgage, and this can be particularly frustrating when you're paying actually more in monthly rent than you would be in those mortgage payments. So I was just wondering, do you have any plans to sort of look at the way that people are able to get their hands on a mortgage, basically?
Thank you.
Jack, I'm joining from Southwest Devon. My question is all about skills. I was quite shocked recently to learn that the number of new entrants into built environment degrees is going down. And we need the people, quite simply, and we need collaboration between different skill sets if we're going to have a healthier built environment, a more sustainable one, if we're going to deliver more homes. So how do we overcome this? How do we get those, people through the doors, not only at universities, but also, in further education, all the other routes into the built environment?
Great, thank you very much. Rachel, do you want to start us off around mortgage access?
Yeah, completely. I think it's a really brilliant point. I'm actually working quite closely with Andrew Griffiths, who's one of the kind of Treasury ministers, who's also very interested in this. There are lots of new innovative ideas in this space. There's all sorts of ideas that have been floated, like long-term mortgages and sort of state-backed mortgage insurance. And some of these do have legs, and we are looking at them quite closely. I think there's obviously always a limited appetite for any kind of innovation from the Treasury, but I think the need here is pretty clear. I mean, look, we had the global financial crisis, and you know that had a devastating impact on the housing market and mortgage holders. Although we are in a tough time now, we're not in that place now because we have improved regulation in the country. There's much more safeguards built into the whole system. I'm quite a big advocate for some of these new financial products that are coming in. So we are looking at them very closely. I mean, I would like to see, frankly, more of this coming forward, and you know, us as a government kind of trying to reach, you know, some of the places that haven't been reached before in this way. I'm optimistic we might see some movement on this. Obviously, it does sit with Treasury. It's not for me, but it would be very helpful because if we can sort of bring this to the market, then we can actually boost supply because we boosted demand and then people are going to build. I mean, some of the building societies are doing this already and some of the mortgage lenders are, but I think government's got a role as well.
Thank you. And on the second part around skills, Sandy and Martin, I know you both touched on this. If you want to come in on this about how we can get those people into the industry, how we can encourage people to take up these careers and start the pipeline at university or earlier.
Well, most people in the construction industry are in it by accident. 25% are there because their mum, dad, grandfather, uncle, whoever was in the industry. Some of them are there because somebody miraculously turned up at school who was really interesting, and the rest are there by mistake. So was I. But I think the construction industry is magical. I think it's absolutely extraordinary that bridges meet in the middle, that you take a muddy field and turn it into something. Let's forget all the dreary bit we've been talking about. It's amazing. We can't get to work, get home, live, work, play, turn a tap on without it. So where have we gone wrong on sharing that? We've gone wrong because we tend to focus on the stuff that goes wrong. And because it's such a tough industry, we spend a lot of time saying, thank goodness that project's out of the way, now let's bid for the next one. And we don't say, that was bloody brilliant, excuse my French. I was at the University of Reading last week, and we managed to get in through the door a cross-section of young people from the age of 12 up to undergraduates, up to postgraduates who were mature. And we had a really lively panel talking about what is good. And we also demonstrated it doesn't matter where you come in, you can have a career that you can build. It's down to us. We haven't got the storytellers. We can find the storytellers, and then we get them talking about it. And then we make sure when they go home after a riveting presentation and their dad says, well, why do you think I'm driving a taxi? It's because on the last bust for the construction industry, I had to find another job, which takes me back to certainty. We need certainty, and we need to stop having a boom bust so that you can see a consistency. But there are other things we can do. I should be serious now, and I'm sorry I'm taking too long. I can bore for Britain on this. However, it would be really good if we could have a built environment course at GCSE level, so that kids don't know anything, or that if they're creative, they find out. But if we can embed something at GCSE level that shows what they can do. I did a roadshow for years with an underprivileged school in southeast London, and we ended up having kids saying to me, oh, so I don't have to go to university, I can do this. And we had a panel of people talking about what they do on a Tuesday, not what the pension plan is and how much you're going to earn. So it's down to us, but it's a mystery to me because I think it's brilliant, and we need them. Right, I'm off my soapbox.
Thank you, Sandy. Martin, do you want to go? I know.
Well, just very quickly, I'm going to be in danger of repeating everything Sandy just said because I completely agree with that. Awareness, yeah, and the diversity of the built environment profession, if you like, if I can call it that. So many different facets that you can go into, more training, more courses. So it's all very well having awareness, but more sort of facilitation as well to encourage more people to come into, that sort of side of things. So.
Thank you. Sue and Nick.
Yeah, we need to change the narrative around it, and I agree with everything that Sandy Martin has said. But it's too late when you get to university. We have to go into the schools. And I want to make a big plug for the apprenticeship programmes that are running, and they need to be expanded, and we need more employers to embrace apprentices, because that is one of the truly great ways that we can bring people on through the construction, into every aspect of the construction industry. And I will say that there are two local authorities that I know, Central Beds and Milton Keynes, who have academies where they are doing exactly that. They are going into schools and they're recruiting and they're growing their own. And that is what we need to do.
Thank you, Mira.
Yeah, I agree with what's been said already, but I would also like to just add the idea of flexibility. I'm an architect. I studied for 7 years in university to qualify as an architect, and we are constantly being told that the job market is going to be changing quite rapidly over the next few years as we transition into net zero. I believe the architecture profession and all the built environment profession needs to embrace this idea of change and create flexible models, pathways into the different professions and sector, so that if you study as a planner, there's an easy way for you to be an architect and vice versa. And if you study as a project manager, you transition into the other professions within the built environment are easier. We're currently, in the architecture profession, we're looking at the reinventing and revitalizing our education program. And that talks about how we can open the floodgates so the people can do that, as like I said. So it's flexibility. Flexibility is one way to do it.
Excellent, thank you. We have unfortunately run out of time for more audience questions. I know there's lots of you who had questions, so please do catch members of the panel afterwards if you can. I want to finish very quickly though by resetting the question that this event is looking at, which is will the housing crisis determine the next election? And if I can press each of our panellists for a short, ideally a sentence answer, and we'll go from left to right. So starting with you, Sue.
Well, I've already said I don't think it'll determine the next election. I think it will be, and it should be, a very important part of the discussion, because it is an inalienable human right for everybody to have a safe and secure roof over their head.
Thank you. Mira?
I believe it will in some capacity, but the key point is not about how many houses we need to build. It's about quality. And it's about bringing the right expertise, skills and expertise that are involved to creating these homes for the future. And I believe that in the next election, there will be more discussion about this issue, but I wholeheartedly believe we need to get the design expertise involved to creating these homes, good quality homes, to create a good quality life for our communities.
Thank you. Rachel?
Well, I certainly think for our party it will be a critical part of what we can offer to the electorate, because we know that the age that people can buy their first home, which is absolutely a central aspiration of everybody, how can you possibly have someone who aspires to build a better life if they can't afford to buy a house on an average income? And we know that that is a real problem in many parts of the country, especially in London and the South East and some of those other areas. So I absolutely think for us, we have to find a way to have an aspirational offer for those younger voters that don't currently own property. They are certainly not going to vote for us if we don't offer them some way that they can actually build wealth for themselves and their future families. And I think it will also determine the election, probably in some key marginals, probably for slightly for the wrong reasons, where there will be very heated local battles and we will face local MPs and candidates who are just basically campaigning on a NIMBY platform. So I think we will also see that. So we'll see some very interesting local politics and local battles being played out.
Thank you, Sandy.
I think locally, yes, you're right, but I would come back to my point that it's a much bigger question of whether somebody can afford to buy a house. It's how can I be sure that I will have somewhere decent to live? And that is the important issue, and it should be a key element of who the next government is, providing a decent roof over people's heads wherever they are.
Thanks. Finally, Martin.
Well, for me, for sure, the housing crisis should be a big part of all parties' political agenda and manifesto, I think. But I think what's really important is that we don't hear about what the problem is, because actually I think we all know what the problem is. We actually hear about what the key solutions are. And I emphasise the word solutions because I completely agree with Rachel. There is not one sort of a one fixed silver bullet here. That needs to be a number of things. But if you could find 3 things on supply and 3 things on demand that you could deliver within 6 to 12 months, boy, it wouldn't half make a difference.
Nice, quick win solutions at the end there. So thank you to all of you who joined us, to those of you who've been watching on the live stream. Thank you to our partners this evening, REBA, RICS, RTPI and CIOB, all the alphabet today. Thanks to my panellists today, Sue, Miwa, Rachel, Sandy and Martin. Thank you very much. Do stay with Considered Fame through the rest of the conference. We're here and in Central 5, and have a very good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well done.